My name is Edgar Kavlavu, and I work for the Kenyan section of the International Commission of Jurists, ICJ Kenya. ICJ Kenya is a human rights organization. We are based in Nairobi, but we work nationally, regionally, and internationally to promote human rights. And I want to take this opportunity to welcome you to this short training video on how to monitor human rights during this pandemic. My colleagues are going to take you through various facets of monitoring human rights violations during a pandemic. We are going to talk about some of the rights that have been violated, some of the acts and omissions by state actors, and also the reasons why we need to document violations during this pandemic. We are also going to take you through some of the methods that you can use in documenting violations. Thank you very much and welcome, and remember to stay safe. I'd like to welcome Ms. Julie Madeka, who is going to talk to you about some of the violations that you have observed as ICJ Kenya. Thank you very much.
Greetings, my name is Julie Madeka. I am going to talk to you about the violations we have witnessed as ICJ Kenya and as civil society. On 13th of March 2020, the Kenyan government recorded its first COVID-19 case. A raft of measures were then instituted to curb the spread of the virus, following which a curfew was instituted on the 27th of March by the national government. The enforcement of the curfew was then preceded by tension around what would the curfew entail. Unfortunately, in its enforcement, we then noted that police officers brutalized Kenyans, beat a few Kenyans, and in Mombasa, even used tear gas, which is in complete contravention of the WHO standards because tear gas causes coughing, sneezing, spitting, and vomiting. So those are some of the human rights violations that we noted on the first day of the enforcement of the curfew. The curfew has still been in place for a period of 2 weeks now. We have also noted an increase in intimate partner violence, sexual gender-based violence, and violence in the domestic setup. This is occasioned by the fact that Kenyans right now are at home, staying with their families and children, which is an unprecedented thing altogether. So we have noted that a lot of complaints have been forwarded to relevant authorities, including hospitals and also police stations. During this period, we've also noted that there is the right to access of healthcare has been violated. This is because of the fact that because of the county lockdown, people cannot travel to get healthcare in various parts of this country, including accessing the National Referral Hospital KNH, because they're outside the designated counties. So it's an unprecedented time. We are noting violations across the country. We are noting also violations across Africa and the world, but we do want paralegals who are out there in the space to document and tell us what is happening during this period to enable us to be able to act more. I will now call upon Joanne, who will now speak on the actual laws that are being violated, the fundamental human rights laws that are being violated during the COVID-19 period.
Hello, my name is Joanne Mutonga. The World Health Organization Declaration on the COVID-19 outbreak, terming it as a global pandemic, has seen countries taking up various measures to curb the control or stop the spread of the virus. Some of the steps taken by the states have involved the adoption of restrictive measures, which have encroached on the existing fundamental rights and freedoms. While this might be necessary in the said circumstance, states have an obligation to ensure that such measures do not undermine human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. Kenya is a party to a number of international and regional human rights treaties. The most applicable in this case being the Universal Declaration on Human Rights, the International Covenant on Political and Social Rights, on Civil and Political Rights, the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. The rights and fundamental freedoms enshrined in these various human rights instruments are similarly guaranteed in our own Constitution. Under Article 25 of the Constitution, provides for four core human rights that cannot be derogated or limited in any given circumstance, even in the said context of the COVID-19 situation. These are the freedom from slavery, freedom from torture, the right to fair trial, and the right to an order of habeas corpus. Other rights that are enshrined in our Constitution include the right to life. These rights can only be limited to the extent provided under the Constitution or under any other written law, meaning that any unlawful killings are unjustifiable and illegal as provided for under the Constitution. Additionally, we have the right to equality and freedom from discrimination, the right to privacy, the freedom of expression, access to information. We have the freedom of movement, which has currently been restricted. We have the right to health. We have the right to adequate food and housing, the right to education, the right to proper sanitation, the right to clean and safe water. I will hand over to my colleague, who will then delve further into this subject by discussing why it is important for us to document human rights violations and further delving into the subject of how this can be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanne. My name is Santana Siu, and I'll talk about the importance of documenting human rights violations. We document human rights violations so that we collect facts which will support a specific allegation or claim that a human rights violation occurred. Once we collect these facts, they can be used at a later date for litigation in court. They can also be used to show that there's a trend in a particular type of human rights violation in a specific area in Kenya. It can also be used for the purpose of research. When you're documenting human rights violations, you have to ask yourself some questions. You need to ask yourself, who did what to who? Where did it happen? When did it happen? And how did it happen? You must also ask yourself, is what I am claiming to be a human rights violation an actual human rights violation? If you are not sure about this, you can check Chapter 4 of the Constitution of Kenya, which my colleague Joanne has spoken about. Also, you need to ask yourself whether you have all the facts needed to show that a human rights violation took place. You also need to ask yourself whether you know that the information that you're giving is true. You need to be sure that the information that you're giving is true. And if you had something from someone else, it is important that you go and interview the eyewitnesses who saw the human rights violations taking place. You need to interview them in order to get the actual facts of what happened. I will now hand over to my colleague Moses, who will talk about the ways in which you can document the human rights violations.
Thank you very much, Santana, for that presentation. I'll also be very brief. And one thing I'd like to mention is that as we do our documentation, we must be aware first of the violations. What are you monitoring? What constitutes a violation? And as you do your monitoring, remember that accuracy and thoroughness in your reports is very, very important. Make no assumptions, and attention to detail is key as per any tool that has been developed. It is also important that as you document, you remember what, where, who, why, and how must be captured in your reports. You can also be able to document through using a phone, through your phone. You can document by taking a photo. You can document by being an eyewitness or through other eyewitnesses, or by writing in a tool that might have been previously developed. It is also important to monitor through media reports, that is TV, radio, through the newspapers. And as you monitor television, as you monitor the media, it's very, very important for you to indicate the date, the publication, the time that that particular violation was reported, and also, if possible, to provide us with a link that can be able to follow up. It is also important for you as you do your monitoring in terms of your style. Be simple, use a neutral language, don't be subjective, don't use jargons or unnecessary objectives. Be clear, concise, simple, and well organized in your reports. It is also very important to be prompt when you are doing your reports, as in, there are some violations that might require our immediate attention or our immediate follow-up. So being prompt is very, very important. Report as soon as possible. Another key issue is that you have to be sensitive when you are doing your report or when you're collecting the information, especially with victims. And by this, I mean victims of sex and gender-based violence. Children is very, very important that you ensure that you follow the code of conduct of reporting children. It is also very, very important that when you are collecting this information, because I know that you are going to receive some information through other witnesses, through other mediums like WhatsApp groups, like Twitter, like Facebook, or any other social media channels, verification of the information you receive is very, very important, especially now that we're in the era of fake news. So let's avoid fake news and let us verify information we receive. Lastly, I'd like to thank you very much. And in case you need to contact us, our information will be screened. Thank you very much. And as you do your monitoring, please ensure that you are safe. Your safety is paramount. Be safe. Take care. On behalf of ICJ Kenya, I say thank you. God bless you.